for a new episode of Code Concepts with myself, Rachel Patterson, and Pete Roquet. And we will get to our extra special guest here in just a moment. But today's kind of a special day. As you all know, Pete and I bring you this show to talk about relevant code enforcement related trainings or things that we need in our everyday lives to make our professions better and to deliver a higher level of service. But today's a little bit different. So I will let Pete introduce our guest, but it's so good to be back with all of you. It's so good to be back in a realm where you get to be around individuals, even for myself, getting to spend the last 10 minutes with some individuals who I have missed for so long. They just fill your cup with happiness, and I can't wait to get started with today's episode. So good morning on this beautiful Friday, June 2nd. Pete, can you introduce our amazing guest?
Awesome, and welcome everybody. We've been away for a little bit, and I totally missed my friend Rachel, my partner in crime. And today we have a special guest, which is Hilda Martinez from the city of Austin. But before we introduce her, just want to kind of reflect a little bit on our journey in code enforcement. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring this guest, and Rachel and I know her for a couple of years, for many of you that know the Women Leaders in Code Enforcement, it's a group of women that have gotten together to champion each other to be better than they could have been before. And since this whole program started, it's snowballed, and you see people promoting to different positions, better positions, making more money, being more influential, being online more, doing presentations. I got to hear both of you on the podcast, on the ICC's podcast, Women in Construction Week, which was awesome. So, one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this show is because, in the whole WLC scope, you will see something along the lines of interviews with industry leaders. And the first time I laid my eyes on Rachel, I was like, oh my God, this woman is amazing. And then I laid my eyes on Hilda. I'm like, oh my God, this woman is amazing. And out of that group was also Tracy Lindy, who I'm like, oh my God, this lady's amazing. And then Susan Dowdy, who was like, oh my God, this lady's amazing. So everybody was amazing. And I'm like, you know what? And it just happens that, I ran into Hilda in Austin last month, and I was like, you know what? We need to showcase these women because we can't forget our folks. And we all have interesting journeys. And today's show is about that journey that we take as code enforcement individuals. And you know what? Hearing Rachel's story and hearing Hilda's story, it was just so inspiring because, like many of us know, like especially us generation, I would say millennials, we didn't grow up saying, wow, we want to be code enforcement officers when we grow up. Nobody ever does that. I know I didn't. I didn't even know what a code enforcement officer was until I got pinched, and that was years ago. And I'll tell that story in a little bit. But, first and foremost, I'm going to introduce our friend Hilda from the city of Austin, Texas. And, just kind of, we're going to ask her a couple of questions so she can summarize. And so, Rachel, please take away with the question. So here is Miss Hilda Martinez.
Good morning, Hilda. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me.
That's the best part is we get to kick off our show again after we haven't seen our friends with a friend like you. And kind of what we were talking about earlier, which I'm jealous about the barbecue, by the way. But that's a lot of it too, is being able to connect with each other, not only in a professional setting, but in a personal setting where we get to know each other. We get to know each other's stories, why code enforcement is so special to us. Some of us eat, breathe, sleep, and love code enforcement. Some of us do it as a job, and it's not right or wrong where you land in that. But what's beautiful, and that's what I said when I was so excited when I introduced our show today, is we get to talk about something different today, and it's showcasing that beauty of where we come from and why we do what we do. So Hilda, if you would give us the honor of understanding a little bit about your journey, where you started, where you fell in love with code enforcement, and then we'll kind of just branch off from there because I have a ton of questions. So
okay.
So who are you, first of all?
I am doing great. Thank you. I'm doing great. Gosh, it's been a minute. Pete and I were cracking up about this a minute ago, so I'm going to go ahead and elaborate a little bit on how I got started in code, and it was totally fate, I think now. I was in my 20s, and I was in the city of Brownsville at the time when I first started, but I didn't start in code. I was actually doing community service. And then I was approached and got asked to join a good team, and it was the first female code enforcement officer for that municipality. So it was a challenge within itself. I'm glad I took it. I'm glad I challenged myself. I did not have a clue of what code was. And after going on ride-alongs and whatnot for a couple of days, I went ahead and put in an application for it. And here I am, 23 years later, and that's all I've done is code. Like, this is my passion, I guess, is an understatement for somebody that didn't know anything about it. But it made sense once I started doing those ride-alongs because of where I grew up. So let me backtrack a little. I was born and raised in Brownsville, Texas, which is a border town to Matamoros, Mexico. And I always came and went, Mexico crossing over is just minutes, literally 5 to 10 minutes, and you're there. And then being a single income household, growing up, I'm the youngest of 6. So I stayed at my grandparents a lot, not just at my mother's. And my grandmother lived in a rural area, which is considered the county. And so I always used to wonder, why is it so different here? I remember being that small, about 10, 11, maybe even 12. But I remember being that young and always asking my mom, why is it that these streets are paved and these streets are dirt roads? Why is it that my grandmother's restroom is outside and when we go home, it's in the house? I didn't understand all of that. And then looking at, the junk vehicles everywhere and things like that. Didn't know any of it. I just knew that there was a big difference and that there was a lot of things accumulated in certain areas, and it would catch your attention even at that age. And so for me to end up in code, I want to say within the first month of doing it, I knew that was it. I knew that was it because I was able to convey everything I was doing with my grandmother. And my grandmother at that time was still in the county. And even with the progression in the county, it was still a big difference on maintenance and things like that and services and whatnot. But I'm glad I got in it. I'm glad I got in trouble when I did. But that's how I started in code.
So, and it's, for people that go on the archives for the WLC, they can hear the whole story, but not a lot of people on LinkedIn go on the story. So it is one of the best stories I've heard about code enforcement, other than a Big 5 story. But there's a tell us, backtrack a little bit, how you're like, you had that aha moment, like, hey, what are you doing here? That's the story I really love.
That's the story you want?
Yes, that's the story. That's the meat and potatoes. Yes.
All right. So the meat and potatoes is I was doing community service, and I got a lot of hours of community service that I had to do. And after some negotiating and some networking, if you will, I went ahead and managed to get away from doing my community service at the zoo and ended up at City Hall doing filing. And they had me doing filing at the Human Resources Department in City Hall, and the receptionist had quit. So they had me doing that as well. And one of the times that I was sitting at the reception desk, here comes a person that I hadn't seen in years, which was somebody I went to high school with. And he walks in, he walks up to the window and he's like, hey, and whatever, we try to catch up, through the window. And he went ahead and he said, let me in. And I was like, you're stupid, I can't let you in. And I said, only important people come in here, bro. Like, no. And he was like, let me in. I'm a supervisor. And I said, you're a security guard. Like, show me your face. And he's laughing and he's like, I'm serious, let me in. And I said, I'm not gonna let you in, I might get in trouble. Here you have a friend of mine from high school. His hair is up to the waist. He's wearing a ponytail, and he's wearing an outfit, a uniform that is similar to a security guard, and badge and all. And I was just making fun of him, you know. And he's like, I'm serious. And I turned around and I'm like, okay, but only for a minute. And so I buzz him in. He comes in, and I got up and I gave him a hug, and we greeted again. And I was asking him, I said, who the hell gave you a badge? Like, what? I was just in disbelief, right? This was somebody I used to hang out with at the tennis courts in high school, so you can imagine. And never made it to class a lot of times, so that was that type of deal. And so he's telling me about what he does. He goes, I'm not a security guard, I'm code enforcement. And I said, what the hell is code enforcement? And he's like, well, you have to do this, that, and the third, and you go to people's houses and you tell them. And he goes, you know what? And he goes, I can tell you this, you'd be great at it. You like to tell people what to do. And I said, I do not. And I said, shut up. And he goes, see what I mean? And he goes, you got that thick skin. He goes, you'd be good at it. He goes, plus we don't have a female. We've never had a female. And I said, I don't even understand what you're explaining to me. Like, tell me more. And we're cutting up. And he's telling me about code, and I'm interested, right? Because I start telling him, you know, why is it different when I go to my grandmother's? And so he was explaining to me the difference between city and county. No, I didn't have a clue. I was in my 20s and I still didn't. I was clueless. And I said, okay, that makes sense. And so when he's explaining it to me, we went back to catching up, and I started our regular interaction in the sense of forgetting where I'm at. And he says, I'm serious, don't. And he goes, you're gonna let her talk to me like that? And I turned around, and the HR director standing behind me, and he's like, Mom, you're gonna seriously let her talk to me like that? And I was like, Mom? And I looked at him and I said, you son of a motherless goat. It's not what I said, but that's what I said. And I turned around and she's cracking up and she goes, I knew you had to not be all innocent looking. And he goes, if you know my son, I can just imagine the trouble y'all got into in high school. And I was like, I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to say. I just laughed it off. And I was like, please don't fire me. I need to finish my hours. And I don't want to go to the zoo. So, so that's how I ended up in code. You know, he started saying let me look at the applications so far. We're hiring right now. So I gave him the folder because I was actually I was the one doing the postings for the positions that were available for the city. And so he gave me a copy of the job description. He goes, put in your application. I'm willing to train you. And he goes, you're a people person. He goes, this is going to be right up your alley. You won't regret it. And I did it. 23 years later, this is what I've done. This is what I do. I love everything about it.
Wonderful. I mean, all I hear is that you love it. So you're in that over here mark where you either eat, breathe, sleep, and love it, or you just do it as a job, you know. And that's, I'm just in awe of you. Listening to your story, a lot of what I hear too is relating. I think what we find, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, Hilda, Pete, but when individuals relate to our profession, we seem to get more done as well. You know, whether that's us as the code enforcement officers and what we're doing, but even if that's, you know, our counsel who are helping to create our ordinances, or rather, you know, either say yes or no. A lot of times it's what's on the agenda, you know, what is good and going on in that moment. You know, a lot of times when we bring a case to court, we have to get a judge that has been maybe a victim of a code enforcement issue or a neighbor battle themselves to really truly understand what we do. So I really appreciated that, hearing that with that relation and your grandma and what that looks like, because it's so important in our profession, right, Pete?
Yeah, one of the things, you know, when I teach courses, sometimes we talk about code enforcement and how none of us really say, you know, grow up saying we want to be a code enforcement officer when we grow up, you know, because none of us really knew what a code enforcement officer was. And sometimes, you know, I do this presentation when I talk about code enforcement, and I show a picture of the Breakfast Club. You know, if you guys remember the Breakfast Club, there's a bunch of misfits like I put in a room and say, go and do code enforcement, right? And then
Exactly,
as
exactly.
we're older, you realize, oh man, if this guy would have been in that cast, he would have been funny. It would have worked out. And us as code enforcement officers, we have, and especially people like us that have never met each other and are in different states, we just know that we belong in this profession, which is
Yeah.
kind of amazing because I get to meet people from all walks of life and say, man, this guy would be a great code enforcement officer, you know? This is kind of, and when I said we're going to jump in everybody's kind of journey story, because this is what the show's about today, it's similar to what I heard in your story. Rachel was out there hustling at a sporting goods store, and somebody caught her eye in code enforcement. So, Rachel, can you kind of like tell us a little bit about your story, and then we'll kind of transition and we'll bring it all together, and just kind of talk about like the pitfalls, the good stuff, and the bad stuff about code enforcement, and why we still love our job today, and why we do what we do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete. Everybody knows if they've heard it. It's my story is kind of simple, but it's about connectivity, right? And connection. Because I worked at a sporting goods store for quite some time and went up through the ranks in different positions there. And while doing that, I had some customers that I had that entire duration of time. So it was over the course of 3 years. That I had helped, whether it was ringing them up or purchasing product for them, or just becoming part of their everyday life because sport was so important to them. That 3 years later, they came up and said, we've been watching you for 3 years. Every interaction that we have with you, we consider, a different avenue into something, a window into your personality and what you can do. And I'm thinking at 19 years old, okay, I'm listening. They took me out to dinner and said, what do you think about code enforcement? And like a lot of people, what the heck is code enforcement? What do they do? And for me, I went home, and at that time there were resources. There were a few online programs, things like that talked a little bit about code enforcement, but certainly nothing to the extent of what we've all created today here in 2023.
Right.
But even back then in 2007, reading what I was reading, it was a chance to connect with individuals on an everyday basis and bring them quality of life. A lot of you that know me know my dorky motto is to create, enhance, and maintain quality of life and safety standards within the community. And that's so important to everyone's everyday lives, right? I mean, we have to, get up and do our jobs and pay our taxes and do the things that we're supposed to do. And I get that. That's all well and fine. That's the personal responsibility, right? Being a citizen. This is what we have to do. But there's also a part of it that people don't necessarily take into consideration how important it is, and that's quality of life. And so for what we do, we get to create that. We get to enhance that, and we get to maintain that. So for me, again, my story is a little bit dorky, but I fell in love. I fell in love with the opportunity to really connect with people. And that's obviously taken off, whether it's training other individuals to love our career as much as I do, or trying to get kiddos involved in the aspirations of wanting to do this as a career, but also understanding what we do with Pete and other key players in the organization, or just bringing code enforcement more front and center in our industry in a collaborative effort is really important. And to be honest, this is like absolute best industry to do that, right? We have this giant industry, and I know this is dorky too, but we pocket each other off into these sectors. And you have fire, you have building, you have energy, you have code, a little bit of property maintenance, you have all of these different sectors. But when you put all those sectors back together and you work together in a collaborative manner, you make magic. And as silly and as Disney as that sounds, again, people know me as the Mary Poppins of code enforcement. So maybe it is silly, maybe it is Disney, but it works. However you take that and push that out to your community, it works. We connect the communities through code enforcement.
We do.
And Hilda's been doing a great job over the years because Hilda does it in Spanish. If you Google Hilda, you will see video after video of her doing her thing in Spanish, which is, a lot of times when we talk about the International Code Council, we say it's international, but it's normally in English. And we've been making strides in trying to change that, and bringing the safe built environment to people in your own in their own tongue. So you do see International Code Council outreaching to different places, but at the end of the day, it's having the public understand what it is that we're doing for them instead of what we're doing to them, and watching Hilda unveil this stuff, doing over and over, doing Spanish interviews, seeing her on television, it's always pretty good, especially if you're in the Latino community and you walk into a supermarket, they're like, "Hey, you're that lady from TV," right? Hilda?
It could be
Yeah,
a
you're
little,
like
it could be
you're
a
like
little
that.
scary, but it's okay. I'm not concerned about safety at that point. It's just, is it somebody that I dealt with directly? Is it somebody that I helped? Is it somebody that I took to court? Like, how are we going to go? So it's usually never a negative interaction so far. Here we are in 23 years. But I want that is one of my goals right now is I want to do code in Espanol. I just it's necessary. I mean, it's needed in so many other languages and cultures, but I have such a passion for it because of where I grew up and my background, right? And like you said, Pete, ICC, it's international. Let's make it international. Let's really, get groups going in different tongues and get that communication going to where there is communication. And the approach is always looked at. My motto, is get informed, get involved, let's work together. And so that can be exchanged in any language,
Well,
But
that's great.
I want to do code and
Man,
I
both
wanted
of
to
you
go big.
both of you guys have cool catchphrases. I don't have. All I have is hats. All I
Hey,
have is
but you
these
got
silly
matching
hats.
shoes. You're all right.
You guys have cool catchphrases, like.
It already is big.
Oh
It's,
my
it's
God.
refreshing.
Right.
It's refreshing to see, that we do take this seriously, and there's other individuals in this organization, in this profession, that find a need, because what is our job? We're supposed to enforce, right? Really, is that our job? No. Yes, no. We have that balance, right? Our
Right.
job is to get that information and communicate that information over to the individuals we're trying to get that compliance with. And if we don't have the right tools, such as these other methods, different language, interactions, let alone documents and things like that. If we don't have these things, how are we getting our message across and truly educating individuals versus just telling them what to do, right? So
Exactly.
I absolutely commend you both for everything that you do to bring those
Thank you.
resources front and center.
Well,
Thank you.
and it goes back to what we talk about when so Rachel's been a big champion of early childhood education for code enforcement. She's
Yeah.
been a real champion, and I can tell you, if it wasn't for me being a little kid and my parents being first generation Hispanic, they're from Mexico, and me being able to translate that information over and me able to communicate to others in Spanish and know the culture is different here than it is in Mexico. What's accepted over there may not be accepted here, and making that correlation as a kid, like you watching those roads and doing that, having somebody understand and being able to grow up and send that message out, it needs to be done in early. And I think this is why we all tie together in code enforcement, because up to a couple up in the 80s, code enforcement was just about the outside ugly, the prettiness, the aesthetics. And today it's like a full, completely different type of code enforcement officer, because
Yeah.
if you look at the duties, maybe in the 80s they weren't really dealing a lot with massage parlors. Yeah, of course there was really hanky-panky massage parlors out there, but not as bad as it is today. Same thing
Yeah.
with marijuana dispensaries. Back then you had to get your dime bag from the local dealer. Now you can just go to a local store, whether it's licensed or unlicensed, and
Yeah.
somebody has to be taking care of it, which is normally falls on the hands of code enforcement, because now it's commerce, not really criminal. So and
Right.
and
Right.
and and a lot of times we tend to eat short-term rentals is another thing. Who'd ever thought we'd be regulating where people go and spend money on
Can
a
stay.
weekend.
Yeah.
It's amazing the kind of stuff that we do. And and it keeps evolving, it keeps growing, because new concerns keep coming up. and our job makes us kind of branch out and do more. And I think we're at this forefront where we need to be kind of jacks of all trades. And people say master of all trades, you know, like with jacks of all trades, master of none. We need to be
Yeah.
masters of a bunch of different trades. You know, we one man band. And you know, but it takes a community to outreach and like, hey, Hilda, how did you do this? Rachel, how did you do that?
It really
Right, Rachel?
does. Networking is key.
Yeah, we have to have those environments too, you know, available for those collaborative type of efforts, you know, because like we talked about, when we're working together, we can make magic happen. So if we're not working together, you know, we're working in so many different facets that it's absolute silliness. So no, this is amazing to have these opportunities to come together like this.
All right. So Hilda, now that we kind of got your origin story of how you kind of got into code enforcement, and I'll share a similar story real fast. And why code enforcement changes us as individuals, because we see so much stuff that, you know, we weren't really conditioned to see, you know, or experience we weren't conditioned to have. I shared this on many podcasts. I wasn't the most I my destiny shouldn't have been code enforcement. You know, where I grew up in the 80s, you know, most of my friends are dead or in jail. You know, that was supposed to be my life as well, you know? And somehow life took a turn and I ended up in code enforcement, you know, and I had to bring that street knowledge, you know, and that empathy over to what I do today.
Right.
Because I have to understand why Bobby or Uncle Ricky staying in the garage. At the end of the day, we really have to focus on, you know, is the growth that we have. And the example I give is, you know, I was a supervisor in the city of Montebello, and I remember, you know, I used to be, I was, if you ever watched that movie Stand and Deliver, I was always kind of like that smart cholo in the class, and you know, and everybody's like, you know, like, oh man, this guy, this kid's bad. I don't know why he's in here. And I was that parent that I was that kid that every parent said, hey, don't hang out with that kid, you know. And I went to a
Right.
different school because my brother got in trouble and I got transferred out with him into like a all white school in a nice, you know, neighborhood. And people did not want their kids hanging out with me because I was that kid. And you know, fast forward. I stayed in that school district. I'm hanging out with the mayor at a conference with a bunch of other mayors. Me here, code enforcement guy, and so I'm sitting there, and the waitress was this honor, you know, prom princess, and she goes, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is your name Pedro? That's my real name, by the way. You know, long story. And
Of course
I'm
it
like,
is.
Pedro Roque? I'm like, yes. And she goes, oh my God, I always wonder what happened with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, I don't know. I thought you were probably dead or in jail. And I was like, but what are you doing here? You're here with all these mayors? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh my God, this has to be good. And I ended up, you know, meeting with her later, and we had like a long chat. She's my friend today. But it was just kind of one of those things that code enforcement
Yeah.
changes. Because I can tell you, you know, seen Rachel in her element at an ICC function, you know, it's a different, it's a growth, you know, saying that girl from remember that girl from Big Five that used to help me find my kid? She's over.
Look at her now.
You know, and you know, kind of things change. So let's go back to you and, you know, your time in code enforcement. You know, after Brownsville, you became a code enforcement officer, and you know, you do a lot of training for other code enforcement officers. You know, this is one of the things that you do. You've been, you're kind of like a mama hen, and that's what I say to Rachel. She's a mama hen. She just tends to get new ducklings and just, you know, and
Yeah.
foster them. So, you know, tell me a little bit about, you know, your journey there.
Okay. So in Brownsville, code enforcement back then was you were assigned an area of the city, right? So you have a sector of the city that you have to take care of. And in that sector, if you had apartment complexes, if you had vacant lots, if you had illegal dumping, if you had to deal with commercial properties, whatever it was in that sector, that's yours. And so you had to get versed in all aspects of code, not just residential and not just property abatement. And I think it's what helped me the most be where I'm at today. That challenging and learning and not having any background in construction really allowed me to broaden my knowledge and skills on approach for different types of people that you run into, as far as anywhere from society to, culture to, whatever. You run across a little bit of everything. I remember these Polaroid cameras back then. It's limited. So, like I said, I didn't have a clue of that position existed to address those things. But when I got started and I started in Brownsville, I think that passion came almost immediately because of the differences that you were able to see almost instantly, just in conveying information, general information, basic information, or detailed information on where you're living, what to expect on. It's not on you, it's on the property manager, it's on the property owner, it's on, no, we take care of this, and no, the city has so many departments, and it's just, you can see yourself grow. And where I came from and my background was nowhere near anything having to do with enforcement. But it was always, definitely, I was always known, like my friend approached me saying, you're a people person. And he goes, this is going to be perfect because you always go out of your way to help somebody, even if it's not something you're dealing with directly. And I'm glad I did. It was challenging, like I said. I'm going to just say I'm 50 this month. And so again, Polaroids is where I started. There's no computer laptop available to us, pagers at the time. So it's been a great progress from then. I can tell you that right now, inventing the wheel, if you will, as we go along and learning from that experience and being able to take some of those processes and then bringing them into another municipality, and then taking that municipality processes and rules and whatnot, and then kind of adding to that, and then making it your own and taking that to an end. So I've worked in several municipalities. I worked for the city of Brownsville. That's where I started. And I was recognized for being the first female code enforcement officer there. And then from there, I moved on to city of Harlingen for a minute, literally maybe 2 weeks, because San Antonio called and I was like, I'm out. It's Antonio, right? And with San Antonio, the code enforcement team that I got into was completely different. They have a division called dangerous premises. So I was a DP officer there, and that basically is, you're dealing with vacant properties, nothing but vacant properties. And these are abandoned vacant properties, whether they're residential. And so it's a different type of inspection. It's a different type of approach, and of course, research and whatnot. But that helped me even grow more, again, because it's still code enforcement, but it's different type and different things that you're addressing, and in a different way. From city of San Antonio, I ended up in Florida. And in Florida, I was working for the county for a minute. And again, code enforcement, right? Because that's my passion. That's what I like. And unfortunately, with code enforcement, for those of you out there, the position has to be available, right? In order for you to apply for it. And so what do you do when that's all you know, right? And so I started doing outreach through our communities, volunteer stuff, just translating and just general information that I could help in the little community that I'm staying at. And eventually, position came up, and I worked in code enforcement in Florida as well, and then made my way back over here to Austin. So again, 23 years in code. I've done anywhere from, like you mentioned, general outreach for English and Spanish communities, but I've also do field training, and I do the Austin Academy. I teach in there. I love that part of it because you have all your newbies, like you said. A lot of people don't know how to start, where to start, and should they start. And so you have to inspire, try to inspire, try to guide and educate these people that are going to get started in what you started in. And hopefully they find the same passion that you have, or the same ideals, if you will. But I think that the people that usually end up looking for this type of job is because they have that gratification in helping others, as we all should, but not everybody's built that way. Some people marvel in other things, and this just happens to be my nook now. I love it. I love it.
I love it.
I do. In Austin, I'll tell you that I was kind of gifted an opportunity a couple of years ago for short-term rental. Didn't even know that existed. But short-term rental wasn't a division. It wasn't a department. It was just an idea. And so we piloted that program, which is now a whole division. I'm an interim supervisor for that division now. Short-term rental it was like you said, Pete, like who in the world is gonna need a license to rent out your house or have people over at your house? Like it was just a different understanding of it then to what it is now. The other program that I am particularly proud of as well is ROP, which is a repeat offender program. So the programs that I'm naming or listing right now, they don't exist in other municipalities as far as its own division or its own department, its unit or whatever, but it's not in every municipality. So having been able to pilot those along with Code Connect is another one. But I'm going to go back and talk about ROP. ROP is a repeat offender program. And so we all, in every municipality, I know you know which one I'm talking about, there's problem properties, right? And they're neglected and they consist of you doing comprehensive inspections versus just going to one house or one individual unit. This is the entire property in question because the entire property needs attention, right? And you're not talking about just the aesthetics and exterior, but you're also having to deal with, you have an entire 2-3 buildings without water, without the ACs are not working, no water pressure, no hot water at that, it just depends. Clarity of the issue is for the entire complex versus just one room or one unit. So that was a challenge in itself. When ROP came up, believe it or not, it was myself and another inspector, and we were called into a meeting and they said, this is what we need. Put it together, make it work. And we looked at each other like, wait, what? And so it was only 2 of us for the entire city of Austin for about a year for ROP. So we went ahead. Now it's a whole division by itself. It's manned by over 7 inspectors, full-time employees, and it has its own supervisor, its own investigator, its own manager. Like it's a successful division in itself. So I'm very proud of that one, as well as STR, and Code Connect is another one that I'm proud of as well. Code Connect is basically giving your inspectors time back out in the field and having senior officers answer a phone, literally a live person answering a phone, to have that exchange with people and being able to look at somebody's case from another inspector, obviously, and just saying, no, this is what he meant, or this is what he's looking at, and this is what you need to do. Breaking down and simplifying what we put in a template, if you will, because receiving a notice of violation from any municipality is intimidating in itself. And then it gets very wordy because they have to, by law, put in all the other stuff, right? And you can get overwhelmed easily and miss the point. And so Code Connect was another one where it's like, I have an idea, and here you go, make it work, right? So it's pretty much, I've been dealt with those fast food type of situations where somebody gives you an order and you got to go put it together and just give it to me the way I asked, right? But those are 3 divisions now within the Department of Austin Code, manned by full-time employees, their own managers, their own supervisors. And so I'm very proud of that. There's so many things that I've experienced and gone through as a code officer. I love being out in the field right now as an interim supervisor. I can tell you that I miss the field. I miss going, being out and about and doing that, but through the field training that I still get to go outside a little bit, but I miss it. And there's just so much, like every municipality has something that I took from it. Again, 23 years later, if I didn't, I was doing it wrong, right?
You are
but
amazing,
doing it
Hilda.
But doing this in Spanish, dude, like, oh my God, it just does something for me, it nourishes the soul, if you will. There's a saying, a well-fed romance nourishes its soul. Well, no, code does this for me in Spanish. Being able to help my community, being able to help just people in general, whether they're my people or not. And I mean that figuratively, of course, without leaving any other culture or race out. I just like what I do. I love what I do. I want to
You are what
continue
we
to do
call an
that.
outdoor cat. You're an outdoor cat or an
I'm
outdoor
gonna go with
gato.
that. Yeah, that's something like that. I just like, I love it. I love it. I'll tell you that I appreciate and respect a supervisor position. I do. Um, but I like the outreach. I like that I still am able to teach classes, that I'm still able to do presentations, and then I'm still able to, go to conferences and still learn, because you still learn. Believe it or not, in 23 years in, I still learn. I still have to look stuff up. Like, don't think you're not going to, you know what I mean? Especially for those new people coming in that don't have a lot of experience in code. There's nothing wrong with still having to look things up. That's how we learn. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions. That's how you learn. The only wrong answer is the question you didn't ask, right? So that's
And it all relates back to your journey, your beautiful
it does.
journey. And
It does. I love
you know,
everything about it. I love where I'm at.
well, and we love you, Hilda. I mean, there was something that you said that resonated with me. You talked about really having the full breadth of knowledge, the broad spectrum of knowledge, and how much you appreciate that. And I can relate to that. In my first position as a code enforcement officer, I had the ability to enforce the land use code, the nuisance code, the this code, the that code. I mean, I joked all the time about it was 223 codes. Beat that, Mr. Fire Inspector, Building Inspector, whatever it is. And
Right.
so I can so appreciate that about you, that's the way you look at it. And like our friend, our mutual friend Cece says too, is you take those nuggets and that's what's beautiful, because you take bits and pieces from each of those jurisdictions. And congratulations on creating those 3 programs that are very robust, amazing programs within those cities.
Thank you.
So my hat's off to you. I couldn't agree more with, like I said, just that broad range of knowledge, getting to really see it as your journey has unfolded, and that's what we're talking about today is journey. Right. You talked about being a supervisor and missing the field, and it's beautiful. I think those are truly the individuals that belong here. But that's part of your journey. You have to get to that point where you are that mentor, because you are mentoring the next, foundation of our industry. And I couldn't be more pleased to know you, Hilda. I love your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. But in all fairness, I didn't create. I piloted. I kind of created in the back. The idea came from somewhere, and it was just put it together. And the fact that you were able to create from that idea, all municipalities are open to it. And I'm just saying, you have so many people that come from so many different backgrounds, and give it an opportunity. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But there's so many of us that have so many ideas and that want to try new things. let them try it. Let them try it. It only makes the department stronger.
The truth. And it makes everybody happy too. I mean, you have this, Anthony
You do.
says
You,
right
you
now,
always feel like
Hilda.
yes. You feel like you're heard,
Yes, and that's what I was just gonna say. You are being heard because we have Anthony who put in our chat that he loves your passion for the profession. So thank you, Hilda. You
Thank
are
you.
being heard.
Yeah. Yay.
One of the things that I've and I didn't see the comment because I don't have my glasses on. So, so by the way, one of the things I love about both of you, you guys have that servant mentality, and what I mean by that is, when you go out to a property, you're not saying, hey, what, and this is where I kind of talk to people, and this is why I love having both of you on, is when we talk about going out to a property, I hear code enforcement, so I'm gonna get them for this, I'm gonna get them for that, I'm gonna get them for this, and I'm like, no, we don't get people. We help them achieve compliance by giving them options and solutions. We're there to assist them in being able to comply with our local codes and regulations. We're not there to get them. We're not there to, yeah, we're code enforcement officers. We're enforcing the code, but there's a way to do it with compassion. My
Most
friend Carrie
certainly.
Simpson from McKinney says we have to do practice compassionate code enforcement.
Right.
And and it's one of these things that I've seen you talk to people, Hilda. You're very soft spoken. When when you get to know Hilda, Hilda's pretty loud. I'm loud. I'm a loud guy.
You got to know
What
when
you
to
see is
tune
what you
in.
get. So same thing with Rachel. Rachel very vocal, but when it comes to working with people, Rachel will hold someone's hand,
Yeah.
and guide them through that process. Same thing with a lot of people that I associate with. We have to create that servant mentality, because if you go in there saying, hey, I need to enforce because I'm code enforcement and I'm the law, and you're setting up yourself up for failure, and
Exactly.
you're creating these hostile environments where now you jeopardize your own safety. This job, people that are most successful in this job understand that servant mentality, that we have to go in there and be empathetic, and not say, hey, you are doing this wrong. You're saying, hey, I recognize what's going on here. This is what the rules and regulations are, and this is why I'm here to help you. I think when we have that mindset and going out there, how can I help this guy today, or this property owner today, or this business owner, where we set ourselves up to be community champions, is exactly what we say. So this is why I love both of you, hearing both of your stories and having these two, forces, the Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather here of code enforcement, bringing it in. It's a beautiful thing to see.
It is. Approach is
Pete, Cynthia.
everything.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, beautiful. I was just gonna
No,
say,
no,
and
no, you're
Cynthia
good.
says it too. Very true. Compassion, finding different ways to talk to people and be humane about it. And that's exactly what you were just saying, Pete, and exactly what you've said this whole time, Hilda. It's about relating to people, being able to translate what we know in a humane manner to leave people with their dignity and respect intact. Because just because they have a code violation or are dealing with something does not have any impact on the type of individual that they may be. So keeping that in mind. So thank you for that, Cynthia. Go ahead, Hilda. Sorry, love.
It's okay. I can tell you right now that if you're getting started in code, know that don't lead with the badge. The badge is just part of the uniform. Be you. Talk to people the way you want to be talked to. Simplify things. Don't make it more difficult because you want to sound more professional. Being humane about your contact with people is being professional. Like you mentioned, Pete, when these houses catch fire and you go to the property, you will end up sitting in the curb. I have many times with that owner and just holding a hand. That's your job. And sometimes you'll end up being in the other side. You're in another location and you're going to have to issue that citation. Issue that citation, but don't change your tone. Don't change your approach. don't let the badge lead what you're going to do. You know, be you. Be the person that you want your family to be approached, you know, in the way that you want your family to be approached, the way you want to be treated. There's a lot of things that go into enforcement. There's a lot of different ways to do enforcement, and education and approach and tone is key to getting those things done. You know, ultimately, what is everybody's goal? The volunteer compliance, right? So know that even in the beginning stage of a code enforcement officer, you have that luxury of making a call. You know, just if it's 10 days because it's by policy, know that it's your discretion to say, you know what, 2 more days isn't going to hurt. I'm going to go ahead and document that and give them 2 more days. You know, you're not going to get in trouble because you're doing things a little different. Ultimately, if there's a reason for it, get your compliance, you know, but be human about it. Don't be an officer about it. That's how I've been able to avoid a lot of situations that could have escalated quickly, especially when you're issuing a citation. You know, again, you're in somebody's property, telling them what they can and cannot do. You know, you're inside somebody's home. You know, and they're paying rent, and they're having to fix things too. You have to hold them accountable. Sometimes it's not just management. So, in all fairness, take everything in consideration. You know, do your research before you go. All your basic stuff. Just be you. Be a good person.
I love what you said.
Yeah,
Don't lead with the badge, Hilda. That's important, right? I mean, don't lead with the badge. Because what is a badge to us as code enforcement officers, right? It should just be a tool in our tool belt, not something that sets the stage for our conversation. So thank you for saying that.
Yes, most definitely. You know, it shouldn't be. And I think it's like the last thing. I think it's necessary, though. I know that some people don't even have uniforms for some municipalities.
Sure.
But how do you expect to get, you know, that type of
professional business?
How do you expect? Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's just sometimes that it is needed, but again, that's just what you're leading with. So it's important to me. I think it's important. And again, 23 years in the field, I strongly believe that that's pretty much why I haven't had issues. You know, a lot of people's like, oh, we need self-defense class, and oh, we need this. You do. I'm not saying you don't, but that should be the last thing on your mind, because if you talk to people the right way, if you approach people the right way, if you use the right tone, you get more done.
Or that's 100% true. And we need to have a show with you on just talking about that very topic, because it is, it's important. You can make magic with the words coming out of your mouth and not the badge on your belt.
Exactly.
Well, what's that saying? Look, your mouth can, your mouth can hurt, it can crush somebody's dream. Your mouth can inspire, your mouth can motivate, your mouth can start a war. It can end a war. You know, it's the way we talk to people and we communicate with people. And Rachel, you're like, you're my Jedi master for this, that connectivity. You just have to have that connectivity with the public. And Hilda, you practice that daily, we have Anthony
Verbal judo.
Verbal judo.
Verbal judo. There you go. Look, it came up. See, I have my glasses on. I was able to see that. So it's just not a facade,
Any
folks.
tools that we can. Oh gosh, Pete. Any tools that we can use, right, to get our message across and do it with a respectful, sense behind the words coming out of our mouths is really what we're trying to get across. So I appreciate that others have that sentiment in this awesome industry as well.
I think there needs to be, more training on compassion and code enforcement, and up to like, when I talk to my friend Carrie, Carrie's a big proponent of this, just knowing her for a number of years, she will drill it in people's head. Hey, talk to golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. And, and I know I didn't really tell my story on how I got into code enforcement, but the person that dealt with my parents' case, treated my my parents with dignity and respect. And years later, when I got to tell him he was the reason why I got into code enforcement, it almost made him cry. So it's a great feeling. So, but thank you, Hilda. It's been a great hour. I know we're at an hour already. You know, we have tons and tons of talk about code enforcement. I mean, we have a whole show. We have 20 some plus hours of code enforcement content available on our website, codeenforcementeducators.com. And, you know, you catch a lot of the episodes of code concepts, of things we've covered over the last, what, how many years have we done this now? 2, 3?
Yeah, this will be 3.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so
we're
much
gonna keep
again.
moving.
Well, we're excited to have you on, Hilda, and we'll definitely have you back because, you know, we've been super busy in our own lives and we get kind of caught up in the day to day. And then we remember that this type of platform is super important. It's important not only to connect, but it's important just to have these resources or a platform to even be able to do that. So to have you give up an hour of your day to come on and chat with us is nothing but special. And we will definitely have you back on as we continue our new season of Code Concepts with Rachel Patterson and Pete Roque.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I miss you
No, and
guys.
just thank you for being a great ambassador to our profession. With
Thank
that,
you.
folks,
Thank you.
I will say
Have a beautiful Friday, everyone. We will see you next time on Code
We'll see you
Concepts.
next time.